Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to your basics. And as you can see, I'm alone here today. No Jay, unfortunately, as we go into our NBA Finals preview. Say prayers, well wishes to him. He has some stuff that's going on right now. Hopefully, he can be back for the next episode. But I couldn't miss out on an NBA Finals prediction, which we are doing here in today's episode. So yeah, it's going to be a solo pod. I don't do these very often. I think I've probably done maybe one or two over the last year. But I'm back, previewing the NBA Finals, and previewing probably some people are calling it the good ending. People are calling it the People's NBA Finals. But man, I'm super happy about it. New York Knicks taking on San Antonio Spurs. We're going to preview it all here today. Who knows? We might get into some postmortems. We'll see how the episode goes. But I'm going to be here kind of recapping how the Knicks and the Spurs got here, preview the NBA Finals, and make my final prediction at the end. So it should be a good episode. Hopefully Jake can post one of his predictions later if possible, but should be a good one nonetheless. So going to be a good episode. We'll see how this goes. Bear with me. I haven't done a solo podcast in a while, but it should be a good one anyway. So sit back, relax, and we'll get into it very shortly. But before we do that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content when it comes to the clips, recaps, all the different series, all that good stuff. Make sure you check us out over there for the daily content. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Let's get into it. San Antonio Spurs, New York Knicks, run it back like it's 1999. Rematch of the NBA Finals there, where it wasn't favorable to the Knicks. That was the last time they made it to the NBA Finals. They faced the San Antonio Spurs. They lost 4-1 in that series to a second-year Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Lots of great storylines to get into here. I mean, this is the Knicks' first Finals in 27 years. And they have a chance to win the first championship since, 1973? Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about. Should be a good one. But before we actually go into the series, I want to kind of just talk about how we got here. And I want to start off with the New York Knicks. Because going into the season, the New York Knicks felt like not the, hands-on favorite to go to the Eastern Conference, but because teams like the Celtics were injured and hobbled after last playoffs, the Indiana Pacers, it felt like there was a spot open in the Eastern Conference, which the New York Knicks could take advantage of. They made the move for Mikal Bridges, obviously, last offseason, not this past offseason, this offseason prior. We saw them go to the conference finals. They felt like one of the favorites going into this year. And they did pretty damn well. 53 wins, top 5 defense, top 5 offense. They hired Mike Brown. They wanted to make sure they can, fully optimize their roster. The conversation around Tom Thibodeau was, not much creative offensive wise, very much relying on Jalen Brunson. And even though there was some success there was always that ceiling. And Mike Brown was brought in to kind of break through that glass ceiling. And to be fair, in his first season, he was able to take him to the NBA Finals. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, man. This New York Knicks team had its ups and downs. And it wasn't like they weren't favorites throughout the season. I mean, they showed some really good stuff there, especially with Jalen Brunson. OG Anunoby probably had his best offensive season. Pretty, pedestrian season for Mikal Bridges. You got some more out of someone like a Landry Shamet, all that good stuff. But at the same time, they never looked like the clear-cut favorites out in the East. And after seeing what they've done the last couple of years, you felt like this team in particular could, really grab it by the horns and really, go ahead and dominate the regular season. But they didn't. They had some ups and downs. Jalen Brunson, played 70-plus games, maybe had a couple injuries here and there. But it wasn't the best Karl-Anthony Towns year. Even 20 games before the playoffs even started, he was talking about how he really didn't know what his role was in this offense. There was still a lot of figuring things out throughout the regular season. But still, they looked very dominant at times. But they also had some pretty bad stretches where, without Jalen Brunson creating for them, they looked kind of rough. It wasn't Karl Anthony Towns again. Wasn't his most offensive, strong season. Still one of the best rebounders in the league. But there were still question marks, like they have every single year, with Jalen Brunson leading the way. We know that there was a good chance they could make the finals, but they weren't the number one clear cut option. I felt like there were many times throughout the season where people were discussing the Detroit Pistons with the way their defense is that was able to translate. They got knocked out of the second round. The Boston Celtics surprised everyone. I mean, freaking Joe Mazzulla won Coach of the Year, and they won like 50 plus games, almost made it to the looked like the NBA Finals favorites because of the returning Jason Tatum, but they got out. And throughout this time, the Knicks were always in that kind of like, number two option where it's like, okay, maybe these teams would be better, but the Knicks are always going to be right there. And that they were just a model of consistency. Man, when the playoffs turned up, the Knicks turned up. And then it was a rough start. They were down 2-1 in the series to the Atlanta Hawks. CJ McCollum, coming up with some big time games there. He ended up, I think, they think that the Hawks only won those two games by 1 point apiece. But the Knicks, they had to be the ones to bounce back. They weren't going to let this season go to waste. And I feel like that's what kind of defines this playoff run so far. Where it's like, you don't know when this type of opportunity is going to come upon you again. I'm not saying that the Knicks aren't, contenders going forward. But there's so much competition out east. It could feel like it could be someone different every single year. This is the Knicks' best chance to do it. And I felt like once the playoffs came around, they took the opportunity by the horns and they completely ran with it. Because after going 2-1 down in this series, they went on an 11-0 run. They won 3 straight games against the Hawks, closing it out with a 40-plus point win in Atlanta. They swept the 76ers. And I don't want to minimize this because the 76ers were the ones that came back from 3-1 down against the Boston Celtics and won it. People had the Boston Celtics as favorites going into the playoffs, and the 76ers beat them. And the New York Knicks made them look like they weren't even there. Absolutely dominated them and won by almost 30 in the closeout game. I know the 76ers didn't look great. I know that they were definitely injury riddled, but I don't want to minimize that sort of series win for the New York Knicks because we saw what the 76ers did to the Celtics. Shout out to them there. Then they go up against this Cleveland Cavaliers team who clawed their way through 2 Game 7s in the first 2 rounds to get to the conference finals. They were up by 24 points with 7:54 left in that Game 1 of the conference finals. And the Knicks just stole from them. They broke their hearts in Game 1 and continued their dominant run, leading up to a 30-plus point win in Game 4 in Cleveland. The Knicks' playoff run can be fully described as them understanding that these type of opportunities don't come very often, and not only are we going to win these games, we're going to win them convincingly. They've won by 20 plus points by I think 19.7 points per game on average throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs, which is insane. They're number 1 in the playoffs in second chance points, offensive rebounding, 40% from 3, over 50% from the field. Up and down these rosters, these guys have stood up. These guys have absolutely played out of their skin. OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, besides those first few games in Atlanta, he's been absolutely fantastic. I think he was at over 70% from the field before that Game 4 when in Cleveland. Landry Shamet went freaking 11 for 12 from 3 in the last series. Miles McBride, Deuce McBride, he struggled a lot of these playoffs, but he finally started turning up in those final few games there versus Cleveland. But it really just starts and finishes with these 2 top guys that they have here. Jalen Brunson, man. Freaking Jalen Brunson has been incredible throughout this playoffs, averaging 26.9 points per game, 6 assists, 50% from the 45% from the field. Absolutely insane performance throughout this playoffs. 35% from 3, almost 84% at the line. He has just been that offensive hub. He has been their go-to scorer over these last few playoffs, and somehow, some way, he just continues to deliver at the highest stage. And now he gets to do it in the NBA Finals. But the biggest unlock with this, I mean, I talked about it earlier. Karl-Anthony Towns didn't even know his role on the offense. But you know what they did here? Yes, he still had his foul troubles for sure. It's if you look at the box score, you see 16 points per game and say, is Karl-Anthony Towns really doing that well in the playoffs? Yes, he freaking is. Because they turned this man into a freaking offensive hub. He is second. Yes, second in the team in assists per game. 5.9. Leading the team in rebounds, 17 points per game. And he is doing this on pretty damn good efficiency. 57% from three, 48% at the line. Almost 90% at the free throw line. Almost a freaking, if you really want to round up, 60, 50, 90. That's how good Karl-Anthony Towns has been playing. And he's doing this being, operating at the top of the key, hitting cutters, making those long-range passes, finding shooters out the corner. I've seen so many freaking zip passes from Cat throughout this playoffs. And he's doing this against pretty damn good competition at the center position. Going up against Joel Embiid, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. He's been absolutely dominant, and especially on the playmaking aspect. So the whole onus doesn't go on to Jalen Brunson. So this Knicks team is clicking at the right time, absolutely dominating. And it's not just the fact that it's an 11-game winning streak. It's the way that they're winning. The New York Knicks look like they're freaking ready for the NBA Finals. I'm going to talk about how they're going to be able to win this a little bit later, but they're doing damn good. Now it's going to the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't want to underestimate this, that they are way ahead of schedule. Remember last year, they were the 13th seed. Yes, they jumped up in the lottery. They got the number 2 pick, got Dylan Harper. Even though they already traded for De'Aaron Fox, even though they already had Stephon Castle, they just added to their treasure of guards there by getting the true top guard prospect of this past draft. But still, people had them as the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th seed in the Western Conference. We knew they were getting ready to take that jump. But people were saying, how good are they, though? Because we knew that Wemby is going to take the next step coming off the blood clots of last season. What is this team going to look like? I don't think people saw that this team was going to be a 62-win team. People did think that they were going to be clearly a top 3 defense. Number 1 defense in the league by far when Wemby's on the court. Top 4 offensively. And Wemby, who was averaging under 30 minutes per game, put up an MVP stat line. I think he finished 3rd in MVP voting, 25-11, 50% from the field, 35% from 3, and won the first ever unanimous Defensive Player of the Year. Insane season from Victor Wembanyama. We finally saw him go into that top 5 form that we knew that he was capable of. But it wasn't just him, man. De'Aaron Fox having an all-star season, 18 points a game. Stephon Castle taking the next jump. Really looking like one of the best perimeter defenders in the league as well. Devin Vassell, very good year. Keldon Johnson, 6th man of the year. I know he hasn't been playing great in the playoffs, but he had an incredible regular season. And then Dylan Harper, first team All-NBA. First team All-Rookie. And looking like already one of the best young guards in the league. And he was coming off the bench. But yeah, they were a 61 team. They were beating good teams. I mean, they beat against the Oklahoma City 4-1 during their run in the regular season. But how was this going to translate into the playoffs? This was always the question. Especially with the first full season of Mitch Johnson, them being in the lottery the last couple of years, and this is their first playoff run with Wemby. We were interested to see what is this team going to look like. And then, it was a bumpy road. They lost Wemby for a couple games there in the first round against the Portland Trail Blazers due to concussion. But after he came back, dominated. 4-1 series. Second round, they faced against a 2-time Western Conference finalist in the Minnesota Timberwolves, who were in the Western Conference Finals the 2 years prior to this one. And even though they tried roughing them up, they tried, getting under the skin of the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs, too damn talented. You see guys like Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper. I mean, they freaking have gone to a very short rotation in this playoffs. And these guys who have been playing heavy minutes are delivering. We've had multiple great Stephon Castle games. Yes, the turnovers have been an issue, but he has been pretty damn good. We've had some big Dylan Harper games. Victor Wembanyama had looked absolutely insane during that playoff run. And they ended up, even though they were 2-2 versus the Timberwolves, they just outlasted them. And a lot of the stuff throughout that series was, the Spurs, they haven't played this deep into the playoffs. Are they going to get tired? And sure, they look tired at times, but it didn't matter because these guys just absolutely turned up And even in those final two games, they won by an average of 30 points against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They completely outlasted them in those in that second round. You just had just absolutely phenomenal performances, and they stepped up exactly when they needed to. But we all knew what this was leading up to. We all knew that the conference finals, which many people looked at as the NBA finals, against the Oklahoma City Thunder was the matchup to watch. People finally started, really getting it, thinking of the Spurs as potentially, conference finalists. Maybe around December time, where it's like, okay, we see them facing against some of the top teams in the West. Maybe these guys actually could do this. And even though they went through, not a maybe not that great of a playoff caliber team in the Trailblazers, but they still beat the Timberwolves. They were hobbled with Anthony Edwards in that series, not being at 100% and no Dante DiVincenzo. So we were like, you know what? They've had not some breaks, but they've had some things go their way. How are they going to do in the conference finals? Well, these guys freaking brought it. Game 1 in Oklahoma City came up huge. Victor Wembanyama, you got to remember, man, this was his coming out party. This felt like, especially that Shea won that received the MVP award prior to that game, this felt like the taking of the crown when Wembanyama had a 41 point, 24 rebound, 3 block performance in overtime on the road in the conference finals. That kicked off the series as one of the best games of the entire playoffs, probably the best game of the playoffs, one of the best playoff games I've ever seen. And then just went in a back and forth with the Oklahoma City Thunder. How are they going to handle Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Stephon Castle looking like a pretty damn good defender on him. Having to deal with the supporting cast delivering the way that they are. They were even down 3-2 in the series. But they went out, won the final 2 games, and in an incredible Game 7, closed it out and took down the defending champions. Made Chet Holmgren look completely ordinary. Below ordinary at that. And yes, the Thunder didn't have Jalen Williams, J-Dub, no AJ Mitchell. But this team was able to withstand, injuries throughout the entire year. But the Spurs team was ready, man. And they came into their little hobble too, with De'Aaron Fox missing a couple games in that Timberwolves series. Dylan Harper getting injured as well with a hamstring injury. But they were still able to pull it through. Stephon Castle having a fantastic series. Julian Champagnie, 20 points in a closeout game. These guys just absolutely stepped up to the plate, and they just wanted it more. We saw the difference of a team that looked like they're trying to chase history, that they didn't care the narrative around their age, and they just wanted to win it. We saw it in the way that they started off those games in San Antonio. We saw it in the way that they, approached that Game 7, where many people thought, are they finally going to get tired? Are they finally going to get worn down? No, they ended up wearing down the Thunder. In a series where, Caruso was great earlier on, made him look ordinary in the last couple of games. Shea finally had his Game 7 moment, but the Spurs completely shut down the rest of the team. They were able to pull it through behind Victor Wembanyama, behind these guys, playing in their felt like a 7-8 man rotation only at this point. They had some guys struggle, but they were still able to pull through, man. They were still able to pull through. And I don't want to underestimate this too. Like, their core stars, their young core. I'll even remove De'Aaron Fox from this. But the fact that they're doing this with a 20-year-old rookie, a 21-year-old second-year man, and a 22-year-old MVP candidate is insane. And they really made it to the NBA Finals with a first-year head coach. This is like if the OKC Thunder in 2012, it kind of feels like that. Except they're not facing the Heatles. They actually have a damn good chance of going to the NBA Finals, or of winning this against this New York Knicks team. But yeah, it is it's just absolutely incredible that they're able to pull this through. And you can see it in the emotion in their faces. You can see in the way they approach games. They freaking want this. And people who are saying, you know what, they're showing too much emotion in that conference finals. Nah. They understand the magnitude of this. And going into the series, the more and more you kind of hear from this team, the more you hear the press conferences, the way that Wemby's trying to encourage this team, they freaking want it, and they're going to be ready for this. These two teams, two different paths, two different team building ways, but two damn good, just the ideal matchup. One of the best, most marketable players in the league in Victor Wembanyama on one side versus the biggest market in the NBA on the other side with the New York Knicks, MSG. It's going to be a damn good series. But let's preview the finals, man. Let's freaking preview this finals. First off, some of the biggest questions I have. What are they? Firstly, I'm going to talk about this the next year. What are they going to do with Cat and Jalen Brunson defensively? I'm looking more about the ideal matches on each side. Because Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby, you could switch them 1 through 5. You can move them around anywhere, wherever seems fit. But where are they going to put Karl-Anthony Towns? Are they going to put him on Julian Champagnie? Are you going to put him on Devin Vassell for the time being? Because knowing his foul trouble and the way that Victor operates, you know that could be something that could be something that can like really hurt the Knicks early on if Cat does end up going into foul trouble. But where are you gonna end up putting him? Because like he is not a great defender on the perimeter. Jalen Brunson, you know, with those athletic guards, it's gonna be super tough for the super tough to handle some of the guards over there in San Antonio. So where are you gonna put him? That's gonna be interesting. And I think the best probably place, and I like when I was looking at these matchups, it's probably putting him on Champagnie. I mean, it doesn't do a lot more on ball stuff for Jalen Brunson, so he could be not really involved in plays on ball. But at the same time, Julian Champagnie being taller, being able to be a really damn good 3-point shooter, especially in that last series, could provide troubles. Especially he could just like shoot right over Jalen Brunson. So it's gonna be interesting what type of matchup they have here. But at the same time, they have so many guys on the perimeter, and OG, Mikal, and Josh Hart playing at an all NBA level defensively, that they can even make up for the mistakes. They've gone against some of the best perimeter guys in the league, in a Donovan Mitchell, a James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and they were able to handle them. But it's different this time, going up against a Victor Wembanyama, and especially when Mitch Rob is as compromised as he is right now. It could be an issue because I do think they have the pieces to deal with the Spurs perimeter. I think the Spurs perimeter guys are actually going to have a really tough time against, Bridges, OG, and Hart, because not only are they going to be as physical as the Thunder guys, they're going to be able to poke the ball loose, and they thrive on those type of turnovers. So that's always going to be interesting. But on the other side, the Spurs, I think, and by the way I see of how they handle Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they are able to, have the guys to defend Brunson late in these games. But at the end of the day, I still trust them more than anyone else on the Spurs, anyone else in the series, to get his own shot, to get his own offense. Because even though he is an undersized guard, someone who is not the quickest, who's not the most athletic, he just always seems to get the Knicks into the best positions in terms offensively. That's what Jalen Brunson does, and he's done this year in, year out. So whether or not they have the guys to contest with him, and I do think they do, Jalen Brunson's going to just get a shot off, and he's been pretty damn good this entire playoffs. He's seen some of those type of matchups, when the Dyson Daniels back in round 1, VJ Edgecombe there in round 2, and some really feisty guys there in the Cavs with Max Strus and stuff, but they all haven't been able to figure out the puzzle that is Jalen Brunson. But, Stephon Castle, again, we saw him do really good on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And he is taller than Jalen Brunson. He's definitely a bit more physical than Jalen Brunson. So I think they do have a good defensive game plan against him. But will Brunson still get to their spots? That's definitely going to be an interesting thing. That's what, and I think overall, defensively, I think they're going to have a good game plan for Jalen Brunson. But how is my thing too, and the way, when I look at this matchup between these two teams, is this whole Cat distributor being an offensive hub there. Does this bring Wemby out the paint? Is the 3-point shooting going to be a bit too much for them? Because this 5-out offense could really be deadly if these guys are hitting their shots. Will the Knicks, be on fire from 3? Will Josh Hart be hitting his threes? And if he's not hitting his threes, are the Spurs going to be able to adjust to a Landry Shamet or a Deuce McBride? the Knicks have so many ways to go offensively. And sure, there could be some defensive mismatches there, especially with Victor Wembanyama if Mitchell Robinson is on 100%. But the Knicks offense is the one, and that's why them being the number one offense in the playoffs makes the series so interesting because this is they're facing the number one defense. But they have just so many guys, and I think even more reliable guys than the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of who you want shooting the basketball, who could be those release valves. These guys have the players, have the perfect counters to deal with the San Antonio Spurs defense, which is going to be interesting to see what type of adjustment the Spurs can make. So what are the ideal matchups? I mean, we're not going to be able to see it here, but I could see a lot of times where OG is going to have to guard Wemby if Wemby becomes too dominant. I think that we're going to see a lot of Stephon Castle on Jalen Brunson. I think that's going to be a key matchup. Devin Vassell being able to guard someone like a Mikal Bridges, maybe vice versa. I think we're going to see a lot of Mikal Bridges on De'Aaron Fox. Again, another interesting matchup because, Mike Brown knows, De'Aaron Fox from their time with the Sacramento Kings. It's going to be interesting, like, who he puts as the ideal assignment on him because he knows him very well. So it's going to be another great chess match between these two teams. What are the ideal matchups and how are each team going to expose the advantages of the other? Because if Wemby gets brought out of the paint, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be a really key defensive change if the Knicks are able to force the Spurs into this. If they're hitting their shots from the perimeter, able to take Wemby out the paint, that could really open up the game for the cutters, which have been absolutely key in this playoff run. That could really help out Cat, who has been the offensive hub, who's been operating at the top of the key. All that stuff could really open up if their three-point shot is working. So matchups are going to be important here. Another question I have for the series: how much will the eight games of these last two rounds of the Knicks versus the 13 games of the Spurs really be a factor? Because people could talk about level of competition, but I am very much standing on this point that it's not just the Knicks winning 11 straight games, not just them sweeping these last two rounds, but the way they're doing it has been the most impressive. But people will say the Spurs, they've got their callus. They've gone through probably two of the tougher teams out in the NBA, especially with the Timberwolves being in as a conference finalist, facing off against Anthony Edwards, having to deal with that offensively, having to deal with the defending champion Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder. They faced some pretty damn good competition. They were able to come out the other side. But it's still freaking 13 games. They still have to fight in these high-end playoff series, where the Knicks, in the last two rounds, over 7 days break each. So it does seem like, level of competition does seem stark. But at the same time, the Knicks are benefiting from this because of the way that Mitchell Robinson, OG, have been hurt throughout these playoffs. Josh Hart even was a little bit hurt during the Cavs series. While the Spurs, they're going into this, unlike the Knicks, who have been to, second, semifinals, conference finals matchup over the last 2 years prior to this year. And this is the Spurs still first playoff run. And I know that they've, been very strong going deep into these playoffs. But playing in June is a different beast. And I think more than anything, we saw it with the Thunder being able to try and wear down the San Antonio Spurs team. I think the Knicks can provide a lot of that aggression. And even though the Spurs have been really damn good in these playoffs, especially defensively, the Knicks offense being that good and being able to, have the Knicks move around, this free motion offense, moving the ball around, having to have to make the Spurs work really is going to be really key here, because the Knicks, they're going to be fresh, and they're the ones who know how to play deeper into these playoff rounds. Will the Spurs be ready? I don't know, because even though Victor Wembanyama has looked like the best player in this entire playoffs, it's different when you have to face the type of offense, especially the way that the Knicks have been playing. And even though, you could point back to the Oklahoma City Thunder series where, Jalen Williams stepped up huge, Jay Will, Jared McCain, Alex Caruso. Those guys, offensively, were more not surprises, but you're kind of having them play out of their element. In comparison to a Mikal Bridges, who knows what it's like to carry this type of load as a third option. OG Anunoby, who's been, again, best offensive season of his career throughout this run. Josh Hart being able to hit his threes earlier on in this series. Karl-Anthony Towns, probably the best three-point shooting big that they had to face going into this. And again, just Jalen Brunson being the head of the snake. This offense is unlike any other offense the Spurs have seen here. And this Knicks team will make the move. So will the Spurs be able to outlast them in a 7-game series? I have no reason not to believe in them. But if that is that definitely a possibility, 100%. And I think the Knicks, in order for them to win the series, because again, they are going to be at a disadvantage on the inside, especially with how good Victor Wembanyama has been playing. But if the Knicks offense, the perimeter offense especially, the way they operate in the mid-range, the three-point shooting, if that carries on into this series, that gives them a damn good shot against the Spurs team. And they can continue to bring the aggression. If they can be the aggressors in this series, that could be something that's really, really interesting. And that could make the series a lot closer than many people believe. I've seen so many, Spurs in 6, Spurs in 7. I don't think we're giving enough credit to the Knicks and the way that they've been doing it. Yes, competition, again, a bit more a bit, different on either side. But again, it's the way the Knicks have been playing. And I'm going to keep harping on this when I go into my prediction later. Final question I have for this finals preview, and then I'm going to go to the keys to victory for each team. Which winner will be more impactful in the NBA history books? And there are two ways I look at this. We're going to start with the Spurs. I don't think this really does anything for the Spurs team overall. Of course, a championship, no matter what, is going to be great for a team. But they've won 5 championships in their franchise's history. They kind of go through the cycle of these generational bigs just coming to their team. More than anything, I think what the impact is on the history books in terms of the team overall is the fact that how young they're doing this at. Again, Victor Wembanyama at 22 years old is already, if he wins a championship, this is just the start of his GOAT resume. We've seen some, young generational talents, win NBA championships. We saw that with Magic Johnson back in 1980. We saw that with Tim Duncan back in 1999. But they weren't the number one guys in their team. I'm sorry. The Spurs had David Robinson in that series. Maybe Tim Duncan was on par with them already early on in his career, but he had David Robinson, already an MVP, a Hall of Famer at that point. And Matt Johnson, yes, he won Finals MVP, but he was playing inside freaking prime Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who averaged 34 and 13 in that Finals run. Victor Wembanyama could go down and rewrite the history books, being the number one option, the best player in the league at 22 years old, on the precipice of winning the NBA Finals. That is the impact that's going to have on the NBA history books. It's the fact that this young core, with guys still under rookie contracts, can go on and win and be the second youngest team in NBA history to win an NBA championship. Funnily enough, the Thunder did it last year with their team, and they were a freaking young team. The Spurs can overwrite this series. And this could just be the start of the Victor Wembanyama GOAT case. This is where, LeBron James at this early age couldn't get it done against the San Antonio Spurs. Yes, the teams are very different. The LeBron team, he really had to drag, those type of guys to the NBA Finals, and they ended up getting swept. The Spurs team is definitely better. And a lot of the guys, I know we like talking about Victor Wembanyama, so many of those guys stepped up huge. Castle, Harper, De'Aaron Fox in that game 7. Luke Cornett, Keldon Johnson, 6th man of the year. Definitely a better team. But Victor Wembanyama leading the way in that sense, being that young of a leader and being able to win here, that's to be the case in the history books. And that's going to be, again, the first notch on that GOAT resume. On the next side, though, this is for the state of New York. This is for one of the top, most recognizable NBA brands, one of the biggest arenas and the biggest fan bases in the sport in New York, MSG. And this is just for the history book saying, we've seen the Celtics win 17 championships, and they've won quite a bit, even like maybe I think they've won, 2 championships already in this century. The Lakers being as dominant as they have been over the last 50 years. The Knicks at this point have been a freaking laughingstock. We talked about it. I think I talked about it in like one of my TikToks where for most of my life, the Knicks have been the laughingstock of the league. They have been the butt of the joke, especially during the Phil Jackson era. Post Carmelo Anthony, postal insanity. That team with freaking Lou Amundsen, Kevin Knox, Alonzo Trier, Alfred Payton, um, who am I missing? Frank Ntilikina? Those guys? That was the joke of the New York Knicks that I've been used to for most of my life. But it wasn't until Leon Rose came along, turned this team, had to, change whatever mess up Phil Jackson left and turn into a contender. Buying Jalen Brunson on the low, sending the type of trades that he did in order to build a team here. A lot of this is not homegrown, y'all. The only two guys that they drafted who are still in the freaking rotation is Mitchell Robinson and Deuce McBride. All these guys trading for Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, signing low on Jalen Brunson. They had to build this team from scratch. And it's not like the Spurs where you're able to draft these stars, get high draft picks, and they're just, exceeding expectations. No. The Knicks had to take chances. They had to make sure that this team fully fits. In the Eastern Conference where, making to the NBA Finals is not a given. There's no clear winner. It feels like it could be a different team every year. Who knows? Next year it could be the freaking Pacers. It could be the Celtics. It could be the Detroit Pistons if they make a move. This type of season for the Knicks doesn't happen very often. And they're going into this, and in terms of their impact on the NBA right now, this is for the time for the Knicks where it's like, this is probably the best chance you got. Yes, the Spurs team is really good, but they're inexperienced. This is your chance to win an NBA championship. But also, aside from the team, and then the historical context of the Knicks winning a championship for the first time in 50 years, this is like, again, imagine this is like the freaking Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. This is the type of gravity that this New York Knicks championship can have. Absolutely crazy. But this also can really be big for in terms of NBA team building. I talked about how both of these teams took very different paths into making this NBA Finals rosters. The Spurs, I wouldn't say a quick rebuild, but a quick turnaround. Again, these are guys in their 1, 2, and 3 years respectively with Harper, Castle, and Wemby. They made the swing for De'Aaron Fox, but it was a very low, apparently, honestly, a low-risk trade in my opinion. Yes, you're paying him a lot of money, but it was a low-risk trade. They were able to build this team through the draft. They have freaking Carter Bryant coming off the bench. He's a damn good defensive player, but they were able to draft him in the lottery. This team was built in kind of ways where you want to see teams be built from the ground up with these rookies. But on the Knicks, on the other hand, like I mentioned, they had to build this team. They had to freaking, tear down the old mess that was left to try and build this team. And is this team imperfect? 100%. But everything started clicking at the right time, and the momentum with them is coming at the right time, that this could finally be their chance. This New York Knicks team feels very, I would say, Raptors-esque, Miami Heat-esque, where it's like, sure, the Heat, made 2 finals during this decade, but at the same time, making it to the finals is not a given. This is not like you have a Giannis Antetokounmpo on your side, where it's like, okay, you guys are going to be competitive for the next decade. The East is so competitive, and everyone is at such a similar level that you might not even make the finals again for the next 27 years because of the amount of stuff that's happening. This is their this is their chance, and this is probably the best chance they're ever going to get. This type of win for the New York Knicks could really show and really adds the parity of the league that you can win through many types of roster construction. The super team built from a decade ago was gone. You could do it through trades if you want to look at the New York Knicks. You could do it through trying to compete every single year, like the Indiana Pacers last year, make it to the finals. The Thunder, best GM in the entire league, building it that way. The Spurs doing it that way. This matchup kind of adds to that parity sort of aspect, where there's multiple ways you could build a team, and you could still, and with the New York Knicks, you could still build a team through the right moves to build around a small guard like Jalen Brunson. He could be your number one guy, and you could still win a championship with that. We all know the Becky Hammond comments. You can't win with a guy under 6'3" unless you're unless the guy's name is Steph Curry. Jalen Brunson's trying to stop that narrative. And I think a win here for the New York Knicks could also, signal to other teams. If you have a freaking, great talent like Jalen Brunson, and he is going to be the one taking, being their number one guy, you could still win with it through the right team building, through the right coaching. And that's what they have right now. This is the chance that they have as the New York Knicks to do so. It feels like an inevitability that the Spurs might make, multiple finals, win multiple championships in this next decade as long as Victor Wembanyama's on that team. It's not given with the Knicks, and it's feeling like that sort of desperation, that sort of urgency that they have could really be a good case for them for winning this title. So let's go into the keys to victory here. What do the Knicks need to do to win in this series? Crash, crash, crash. And this kind of goes into my second point, which is also being the aggressors. Don't be afraid to go with Wemby. Yes, he's going to get maybe 5, 6, 7 blocks in a game. But this team is able and has the players here to be physical with the San Antonio Spurs. This team is number 1 in points in the paint, 3rd in points off turnovers, number 1 in second chance points per game in this playoffs. If they're able to attack Wemby, if they could find ways to get into the paint, even just get it over him and win the offensive rebound battle, that would be massive. I mean, we saw with the Oklahoma City Thunder, some of their best offense came off of offensive rebounds. If the Knicks have the players to do so, if Mitchell Robinson is healthy and if he's on the floor, or if he's healthy enough, he's going to be such a big, factor in this. We saw that in the NBA Cup final where he basically was bullying Wemby on the offensive boards, which really sealed the win for the New York Knicks there. We've seen that it's been successful throughout this playoffs, and if Mitchell Robinson's healthy, and if the aggression of the Knicks are there, they could definitely do it. There's a path to victory there. Another thing that they have to do: continue to shoot the ball well. They are the number 1 shooting team in the NBA playoffs right now at over 40%, the only team that's over 40%, and they have the shooters to do so. And Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. Karl-Anthony Towns is one of the best shooters, especially of all time at the big man position. Jalen Brunson is very effective at the 3-point line. The only person I'm more worried about is Josh Hart. 3 out of the 14 games, he's only shot over 40%, and he's had some rough shooting games throughout this playoffs. I think in general, he's in the 20%. But if he's not hitting, you got to be okay with making that change, Mike Brown. You have Deuce McBride coming off your bench. Landry Shamet, I mentioned in the last series, went 11 for 12 or 12 for 13 from the 3-point line. He was absolutely massive. They have the pieces there where they can go 5 out, really stretch out this San Antonio Spurs defense, and really try to dominate from the perimeter. Take Wemby out of his comfort zone. Dominate in areas where Wemby is not there, which is the perimeter. If they could do that, Karl-Anthony Towns continue to be in his playmaking role, relieve some of the ball handling duties of Jalen Brunson. And I think that there's a lot of, great offensive movement that they can have there with the amount of cutting that they do in their offense, the amount of guys that can, hit their own shots, how quickly they can get into their offense. Those type of keys to victory can really be effective against the San Antonio Spurs team, who, let's be honest, don't have anyone as, reliable as Jalen Brunson on the offensive end to create their own shot. And they're definitely more reliable in terms of their supporting pieces than the Oklahoma City Thunder was in the last round. They're healthier. They could be a bit more aggressive, and they have different guys that can get to their spots on the floor with the right ball movement as well. Make the Spurs uncomfortable. Take them to different defensive schemes that they haven't been comfortable with, especially with the way you're shooting the ball. That would be massive. The Knicks' perimeter play is basically the key to the series for them. If they can continue to be dominant like they've been through this entire playoffs, they can get that win. The Spurs, though, what's their key to victory? Their key to victory is to dominate the paint. They don't have the shooting ability of the New York Knicks do. Julian Champagnie is the only one that could really compete with them in terms of 3-point shooting wise. But they have the guys that can attack the paint. It's Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama. They can shoot the threes, and they've had some really good 3-point shooting performances. But getting to that second level is what's going to really make them be the dominant team in the series. because Mitchell Robinson, again, he's the one that's hurt. They don't have the perimeter, the interior, defensive ability of a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder with a Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. They got Karl-Anthony Towns there, and he's willing to foul. If you're able to attack him in that sense as well, that could be good for taking him out of the offensive end. So playing aggressive, dominating the paint, that is a key to victory. And I think they've been doing that throughout this entire playoffs. One thing, though, they got to do in this series and really focus on is limiting the turnovers. I know people like to, point at Stephon Castle, especially that he, in certain ways throughout the playoffs, how, he had 10 plus turnovers in those first two games versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have the ball handling to kind of take it out of his hands so he can continue to be the off guard, but it's going to be just as dangerous when it comes to turn the ball over against this Knicks team, because these guys, not only are they just as aggressive on the defensive end as the Oklahoma City Thunder, this Knicks team thrives on getting, live ball turnovers. You have freaking OG Anunoby. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Mikal Bridges having some, being at his peak, being an all NBA level defender. Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson. These guys can really, shake up the game defensively. And we've seen it against the Cavs. Seeing it against the Philadelphia 76ers, where the Knicks defense is so suffocating that they go on these long runs and really put a game out of reach because the amount of turnovers they face and the amount of times they can go on the fast break. If they can limit the turnovers and have their defense set up, which I know the Spurs have been doing a really good job in limiting that, especially in the Thunder series as well, that's going to be absolutely key for them to win the series. So they got to be the aggressors. They got to be the ones not making the so-called rookie mistakes, the young player mistakes. This Knicks defense is really damn good, and if you continue to feed them easy opportunities on the offensive end, it's going to be super tough for the Spurs to stop. They got to be the ones. Again, we've seen them be aggressive, be the aggressors at the start of the game. They just got to again, from the jump, really focus on trying to keep the ball in their hands and try to play at their pace. That's how they're going to be able to win this one. So, with all that being said, what is my prediction? I guess if I have to, put my overall thoughts on this, I think that the Spurs are not a great matchup for the Knicks. Especially because with Mitchell Robinson injured, we don't know how compromised he's going to be again. This game one is going to show us a lot, especially of how much Mitchell Robinson could be impactful in this series. But with Karl-Anthony Towns being your last line of defense, Jalen Brunson being out there on the court, and the way that this Spurs team is able to put pressure on the rim, it's going to be tough to handle. And I think on that end, offensively, the Spurs provide a tough matchup there. Even though they do have the perimeter guys to help deal with it, it's going to take a whole defensive team effort to make up for what is missing from Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. To be fair, they have been doing it throughout this playoffs. But against Victor Wembanyama, it's a lot different. But funnily enough, I do think that it goes the other way too. This Knicks offense and its ability to go 5 out, be dominant from the perimeter, operate in spaces where Wemby, I'm not saying that Wemby's not going to be there, but where he feels, less comfortable, where you're going to have to bring him out to the perimeter. That's where the Knicks are going to be able to do that, because they've been so good at operating from the perimeter, shooting the 3-pointers, being able to, run this offense through Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns at the top of the key. Those type of guys can really, provide, spacing issues for the San Antonio Spurs, and they're gonna have to be the ones, recovering when the Knicks be able to hit their 3-point shots. That outside in sort of thing is going to be really important when it comes to Knicks and trying to find their offense, because this Spurs team, again, number one defense in the entire playoffs. They have guys in the perimeter that can, match up with Jalen Brunson. But if there are other guys are hitting, it can open up the game for him and be still one of the more consistent offensive guys here. But if Karl-Anthony Towns can be a 3-point, gunner out there, being, that over 47% from 3-point shooter, that's really going to make the Spurs have to make those decisions and having to defend the perimeter, which is very different from what they've had to do against the Thunder the Timberwolves, where a lot of their offense does funnel towards the paint and going into Wemby's business. Nah. This Knicks team can provide that 3-point shooting perimeter offense, which could, you know, really make it troublesome for the Spurs. One of the things again I mentioned, how we'll see how compromised Mitch Rob is. It's gonna be like a lot harder to have a Wemby, especially if they don't have, that Hartenstein like guy there. Funnily enough, Hartenstein used to play for this team. But, and what's really gonna fuel my final prediction? When it comes to the auxiliary guys, hitting shots and hitting big ones, when it comes to late game execution, I trust the Knicks more. I trust them to get that, last stop. I expect them to, really buckle down and try and, make it really tough when it comes to like a close, chippy game. I trust the Knicks more. And like the Pacers, even though the Knicks seem like the underdogs, they are going against a less experienced team. I think they're going to play with a different sense of urgency, where it's like, this is our best chance of making the finals, and in the way that they're able to like kind of stay in games no matter what. I think it's going to be just the type of mentality you need to beat the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs, because they might throw the first punch, but I trust that the Knicks are going to throw the next one back. And even though if the Spurs are going to throw the next one, I do think that the Knicks are going to have like that fourth, fifth, sixth punch, which I didn't think that Oklahoma City Thunder had. There's a lot of blowouts in that series because I felt like there was like one major blow and that really, took him down. And the punches kind of came through each round. Each game, there's going to be multiple punches thrown. There's going to be some wars. And I think if it does come down to it, and if it comes to like, late into that round, late into that game, I think I'm going to just trust the Knicks more in that situation. I think it's going to go long. I do think the Spurs provide, massive mismatches in this matchup versus the Knicks. But at the end of the day, I have the Knicks winning. I have the Knicks winning this series in 7. They have the perimeter shooting. Even if Josh Hart's off, freaking Landry Shamet's been fantastic. I think Miles McBride's going to provide some key moments off the bench. I didn't even freaking talk about Jordan Clarkson. This guy can play a big role and have some really good spot minutes. They have the perimeter defenders to deal with the perimeter guys of the Spurs. They can really try and like get the ball out of Wemby's hands. And if you do that, do I trust the rest of the Spurs guys to be hitting their outside shots, be able to be as effective on that end? Who knows? I don't feel as confident in that, and I do feel and I trust more about the offensive ability of a Jalen Brunson, the shooting of the rest of the Knicks, and being able to little by little break down the San Antonio Spurs team. Is it going to be tough? 100%, and I completely understand why people would have the Spurs winning this one. But officially, I'm going to go with the Knicks in 7. Jalen Brunson wins Finals MVP, and I do think that this perimeter play of the Knicks is going to be the difference maker here. And I think like their first time making the finals in 27 years, it's going to ultimately lead to an NBA championship, which is hilarious because in my bold predictions back in January, I had the Knicks going to the finals, but losing in 6 to the Thunder. I think that from what I've seen from the Knicks throughout this entire playoff run, I think this team is ready. I think this team understands like what's at stake, and they're not trying to waste this opportunity. Funnily, I hate to steal a line from Hamilton, especially because it was definitely based in New York, the play, but they're not going to throw away their shot. I don't think they will, and they're going to able to end up winning this series for the city of New York. I think they're able to pull it through. Knicks in 7. Man, I'm super excited for the series. I think there's just so much, positive energy around here. People freaking love the way that the Spurs have been playing, how Wemby is like already turning into one of the best players in the league at such a young age. People are so enamored by that. People love the whole Knicks story, having them, potentially win a championship for the first time in 50 plus years. The energy is going to be great in both MSG and in San Antonio. I think in terms of viewership, in terms of narrative going into the finals, I know I didn't talk about that a lot in this one, but this is something that the league wants. Seeing like, the young upcoming star really take that, jump into stardom mode and really become a global star in this finals, while facing a team that is the biggest market in the NBA, that's gonna have like the biggest eyeballs and a lot of people watching from New York. So it's going to be a damn good series. Super excited for it. I have the Knicks winning. Funnily enough, I'm doing this while recording in a Spurs shirt. But I do have the Knicks winning. Should be a fun series, though. I want to hear your thoughts down below. Do you agree, disagree? Who do you have winning it? And in how many games? But man, let's see. I'm going to end today's episode here. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out all of our social media accounts down below. We're going to be back again next week for an episode, whether it's a solo pod or with Jay. Hopefully we can get his thoughts on the series as well. But yeah, super excited for the playoffs. You're going to see this probably just before the playoffs tip off. I'm going to have this up for probably like 4 o'clock or something. So hopefully you get to watch this out before the playoffs start. But yeah, should be a fun series. Again, thank you guys for all the support. And yeah, we're going to be back next week for another episode. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV signing out. Peace.